Hello, this is a talk I gave in 2019 at SwiftFest Boston titled Programming with Purpose. So I'll start by telling you a little bit about myself. My name is Ish. I'm an independent app developer from Southern California. I'm a father, a husband, a teacher, and sometimes a student. Today I'm going to talk about purpose. Purpose comes in all sizes, large and small. My small purpose for right now is to deliver an entertaining and engaging talk without embarrassing myself too much. My greater purpose for this presentation and for my life is to help as many people as I can in small ways every day. Small ways. Why small? Well, to answer that, we need to go all the way back to 1986. In 1986, I was 8 years old. I lived in a one-bedroom apartment with my parents and 6 siblings. I was the oldest. I would love to say that it was a safe, healthy, and nurturing environment, but unfortunately it was kind of the opposite. It was a great place to work on your reflexes. It was kind of a tough time, and if you recall, I said 9 people in one apartment. I used to joke that it was so small you had to go outside to change your mind. Speaking of outside, we lived in South Central Los Angeles, which at the time was notorious for crime and violence. Kind of like Gotham, but without Batman. One of my chores in the evening was to take out the car stereo and car battery and bring them into the house, because if they were left in overnight, they would not be there in the morning. I went to bed to the sound of gunshots and police sirens, and occasionally the screams of someone who was not going to make it through the night. Then, in the morning, I would wake up and walk to school, sometimes with the evidence of the person who didn't make it on the curb. It was tough. School wasn't particularly safe either. I was bullied for how I walked. I was bullied for how I talked. Sometimes I was bullied because I was poor. And once I was like, hey, you're poor too, to the bully, and that did not go well. He didn't appreciate my insight. And also, my parents kind of dressed me funny. That's me in the middle. Now, clearly this is picture day, so you'd think I was dressed like this for the photo. Nope. That bow tie was a constant thing because my dad thought it was a good way to go. And at the time, in the 80s, I wasn't allowed to wear denim or sneakers. I had to dress like this in a very tough neighborhood. So it was a rough time. My purpose at this time was basically to survive. I didn't feel safe at home. I didn't feel safe outside in the neighborhood. And I didn't feel safe at school. I wake up every morning with one goal. Just don't die. One day at recess, my 4th grade teacher, Mrs. Mead, came up to me on the playground and asked if there's one thing in the world I could learn about, what would it be? Thinking back, I probably should have said self-defense. But what I said was computers. The interesting thing about that is that at the time, in 1986, computers were kind of like Teslas were 10 years ago. You may or may not have heard of them, and definitely no one you know owns one, particularly not in a neighborhood like this. So, Mrs. Mead nodded and walked away. A few months later, I walked into class, and Mrs. Mead was standing next to a computer, an Apple IIe. She called me over and started showing me how to use it. And honestly, this is one of the happiest moments of my life. I later learned that after our chat, that she had enrolled in a class at a local community college on basic computing. Then she used her own money to buy a computer and bring it into the classroom specifically to teach me how to use it. I get choked up whenever I think about it because that one moment changed my entire life. Slowly, my goal shifted from just trying to survive to learning everything I could about computers and technology. I started programming in BASIC the following summer. I would spend 8 to 12 hours a day just learning new things and trying to learn as much as I could about the technology. This was before the internet was even available. So, 12 hours a day, no internet, that's dedication. Years later, my goals have shifted from learning about computers to finding ways to help others. I feel like I owe it to Mrs. Mead to help someone as much as she helped me. But that was a lot. I don't know that I can help a single person that much, so I try to help as many people as I can, even in small ways. Because the truth is, you never know that little nudge you give someone, the little help you give, where it'll go. Little things become big things over time. I'm going to share with you 3 lessons I've learned that give me a larger sense of my purpose. The first one is being curious. Begin with curiosity. One of the things I learned from Mrs. Mead was the impact of curiosity. When she approached me, she didn't tell me what she thought I should take interest in. She approached me with curiosity. She asked, "What would you like to learn about?" If nothing more had come from that interaction, if she hadn't gotten a computer or any of that, she still would have had a positive impact on my day and probably made my week just by being genuinely curious about me and my interests. This quote comes from my dad. One of the things my dad used to say was, "Stop knowing so much and listen." That's kind of a crude way of saying it, but I think what he meant at the core was begin with listening. Mrs. Mead was able to help me in a transformative way because she listened first and then took action. That's a formula for success, and it's pretty much universally applicable. Start with curiosity. Imagine you have a fantastic app idea. Great. Who is your customer? What are their needs? How are you helping them? How are you not? One of my favorite ways of using curiosity is a little trick I use to combat fear. Curiosity versus fear. The world can be a scary place, particularly the unknown. And the challenge with this in early life is pretty much everything is unknown. And fear can really keep you stuck where you are. Fear comes up for developers in many ways. The fear of trying something new, the fear of sharing your code, the fear of pursuing your passion. One of my biggest fears is public speaking. So if I fear public speaking, and I really, really do, why do I do it? I do it to contribute to the community. I do it to share what I've learned with hopes that it might be helpful. When I was young, I was very quiet. Sometimes I would go hours without speaking. And when I went to speak, I'd have to gently pry apart my lips because the skin would tear when I went to talk. I mentioned earlier that I had some experiences with bullying, and I learned from those experiences that talking seemed to make it worse. So I was just very quiet and very awkward. When I was 17, I moved away from home. I went up to Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo, and I lived on campus full time. After the first year, I think I probably knew maybe 8 people, including my roommate. I was still very shy and still quite awkward. My second year, when I turned 18, I decided it was time for a change. I had all these stories in my head about how if I spoke up and said hello to people, I'd be ridiculed and mocked the way I was when I was a child. As I was sorting through this fear, I started to become curious. I started to ask, okay, and then what? I say hello, and someone says something rude. Okay, and then what? Well, I guess say hello to someone else. So I decided that in between classes, I would sit in the lobby of the dorm. I would face the door, and each person that came in, I would smile and say hello. And if it went great, fine. If not, that's all right. Someone else would come through, and I would do it again. I was expecting a complete repeat of my social interactions of the past rude comments, name calling, etc. But I also decided that if that happened, to just carry on and say hello to the next person I saw. Turns out, not a single person was mean or rude in any way. And as a result of that, I slowly started making friends. And honestly, by the end of the second year, I had made hundreds of friends, and my social anxiety had basically vanished. As it turns out, for many fears, asking, and then what, really weakens them. Very few fears can be explored in this way, more than a few levels without totally falling apart. I'm afraid if I get up in front of a crowd, I'll sound silly. Okay, and then what? And then the crowd will laugh. Okay, and then what? Well, maybe I'll laugh too. Okay, and then what? Well, I guess if we're all laughing, maybe it's not that bad. Fear has a way of holding you back. It'll tell you all sorts of lies and made up stories. Examine your fear. Ask, and then what? And then what? And then what? And then what? Until your fear has nothing left to say. Another lesson I've learned is to take action. Take action because little things become big things over time. When I first started using computers, it's something I did only in my spare time. I had no idea how to type properly, so I convinced my mom to enroll me in a keyboarding class over the summer at Los Angeles City College. I was 9 years old. There wasn't a rule saying that 9-year-olds couldn't attend college, so I did. It didn't turn out that well, though. Try as I might, I just could not get the hang of it. And by the end of the course, when I was doing my absolute best, I was typing maybe 7 words a minute and had errors all over the place. I was just really, really bad. One thing I did learn from that class, though, was about home row. So just putting your fingers on ASDF, JKL, semicolon. I decided, okay, I'll continue to keep my fingers on home row and just look as I type because I can't look away. It just doesn't work. Turns out that was a brilliant idea. Later on, at the ripe old age of about 12, I decided to look up for my hands. Lo and behold, I could type perfectly. I could type about 55 to 60 words a minute with no errors. A skill that I couldn't grasp at all a few years ago, I was suddenly proficient at. Now, to be honest, typing without looking at the keys is a really small thing, and it's also not completely transferable. I tried the same thing with my iPhone, and 10 years later, I still can't type without looking at the keys. What I learned from that experience was transferable, though. Little things become big things. So even if you don't seem to be making progress in an area, stay focused on the direction you want to proceed and make small steps in that direction when you can. Later, when I became an independent app developer, I did so while having a family, a full time job, and a 4 hour a day commute. I didn't have time to write an app. I had time to write a label, maybe a button. So every day, I wrote a little bit for a little while. Looking back over the last 10 years, I've written about 25 apps. A few of them featured by Apple, Starbucks, TechCrunch, CNET, and more. Those are big things, but they all started out small, making incremental progress in the direction I wanted to go. I used to say that I wrote apps in my spare time, but the truth is, there's no such thing as spare time. We have a finite amount of time, and we won't be getting any extra. So, what I've done with the time I do have is invest in things I'd like to see grow, and then hope that I've chosen the right direction. So far, so good. Sometimes great, sometimes not. Something I didn't mention about Mrs. Mead is that she wasn't tech savvy. She wasn't personally a big fan of technology. I had lunch with her a few years ago, after many, many years, and I was surprised to find she didn't own a smartphone. She's really low tech, and smartphones just didn't appeal to her. Mrs. Mead, who changed my life, the reason behind my passion for computers, wasn't a computer nerd, or even a math nerd. She didn't really like math. She learned and she shared just enough to get me started. What she taught me were the basics, like what a computer is, where the monitor is, what a keyboard is. She taught me how to hold a floppy disk and where not to touch it. She showed me a couple of programs, and then she showed me where I could go to learn more. I'm telling you this part of the story because there's a rumor going around that you need to be an expert before you can help someone else. You don't. You just need to be curious and take action, because little things really do become big things over time. The third lesson I've learned is to be present. Be present. You never get to have this moment again, so make the most of it. 2016. 2016 was a very impactful year for many people. I don't know if you remember it. Mine was actually going pretty well until November. Anybody remember November 2016? For me, the day after Thanksgiving, my wife had a doctor's appointment, and I was going to meet her there after work. I got a call when I was in the parking lot from a nurse with an upbeat voice saying, "Hey, are you close?" And I was like, "That's awfully great service from a nurse." I responded, "Yeah, I'm just parking my car." And she's like, "Oh, great. I'll come out and meet you. What are you wearing?" And I thought, oh, that's awfully nice. So I met the nurse, and we walked to the doctor's office, and the doctor explains to me and my wife that she has stage 4 oral cancer. And then he starts to describe the treatment. This is really interesting because my wife has never smoked. So smoking didn't cause it. It's not genetics, it's not hereditary. Only 1 out of 100,000 cancer patients have this particular form of cancer. As the doctor put it, it was just bad luck. As a part of her treatment, she had a maxillectomy, which in layman's terms means she had to have the upper left hand side of her jaw removed. And that wasn't really the treatment part, that was prepping for the treatment. That part was tough, but like I said, it was just the beginning. She actually recovered from that within a few weeks. Then the radiation and chemotherapy started. Over the next couple months, she received 35 treatments of radiation. One treatment per day, Monday through Friday, for 7 weeks straight. Then chemotherapy once a week for 6 weeks. She stopped being able to keep anything down about 3 weeks in and stopped eating altogether after a few days. I was really hoping that after the treatment things would get better because she was no longer being poisoned or burned, but actually they got a whole lot worse. In general, I'm a pretty hopeful person, but during this time I was shaken. I didn't know what to do. I was afraid that she was going to die, and looking into her eyes, I could see that she feared the same thing. By this point, she hadn't had a bite to eat in over 3.5 months, but was still vomiting multiple times a day. She had lost about half her body weight, and I wasn't really sure what to do. I was honestly completely lost. As her advocate, I was having a tough time staying focused. I went for a walk, and an idea popped in my head. I thought, what if all the science fiction I read is true, and time is not linear? What if everything that's happening now has already happened, and the result is already set? What if what I'm doing now is just having an extremely vivid recollection of the past? What would I do differently? I would slow down. I would find small things to appreciate. This was a pivotal point for me in my role as her advocate, but even more so as her husband. Now, thank goodness she started to recover a few weeks later, and now she's healthy and cancer free. Since that point, though, every interaction I have with her, I treat like I'm reliving a memory, and that it may be the last time I see her. Every time I kiss her now, I kiss her like it's the last kiss we'll ever share, and that I need to remember it. That shift in perspective changes everything. Life is really short. If you can live it like you've gotten a second chance to do it again, it's amazing how much more alive you feel. All right, time to wrap this up. So, my purpose is to help as many people as I can, even in small ways, every day. I encourage you to use what you already know or what you learn to help someone else, even in a small way. If you don't know how, that's okay. Someone or something will need you eventually. Meanwhile, be curious, take action, and be present. Thank you so much for listening.